Previously on the Multiverse of Marvel podcast.
There was like Hulk, there was Daredevil, Captain America.
Alright, everybody, welcome to the Multiverse of Marvel podcast, where each week our resident Marvel guys, Aaron and Dan Gridley, will take a dive into the crazy corner of the ever-expanding multiverse to see which topic we're discussing this week. Welcome, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Not
good.
so
That's
bad.
Good. How about you? Yeah, that's good. The weekend is going well so far, even though we're only partial the way into it, or almost halfway.
Where we are, it is beautiful outside.
Yeah, so
Yep,
Yeah,
it is.
the last couple days have been pretty
Sit down outside, enjoy the sun. Let my cat enjoy the sun too a bit, I think.
Yeah, that's good. So as I said, it's like I was out earlier and took the dog out, and then friggin' had a knock on the front door, and the friggin' neighbor was bringing the dog back because as I was saying, those guys even closed the gate after them after they left. The nerve. Yeah. So before we get into everything this week, we have two little pieces of Marvel news. The first one is released a couple days ago that Black Widow, the Eternals, and Shang-Chi movies will be delayed. The release dates are like well into next year, which was kind of be expected because partially with Mulan wasn't really they tried to put it on Disney Plus and it probably didn't.
Well, I mean, because again, as I pointed out, I don't really want to pay $30 on top of my Disney Plus to watch Mulan. If I'm gonna watch Mulan, I'll just put on the cartoon, you know.
Exactly, yeah. So and that was my thinking as well. And I think kind of the movie is more so for the people that saw the cartoon and what then it is purely a children's movie. So
see, I'll watch it, but I'm not paying $30 extra to watch it.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, I'm already paying for Disney Plus. I don't really want to pay extra $30 for a movie that, I can take that $30 and instead, go see Bill and Ted instead, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, so and it doesn't so it didn't really strike me as like a great children's movie. So so I think that's probably part of the test. Yep. So it was probably expected that at least Black Widow was moving back, and I forgot that the Eternals were the Eternals and Shang-Chi this year as well, or
I don't think Shang-Chi was, but Eternals I think was supposed to be like November this year, I think.
All right. And just for like quick little people like for me that are listening, like I'm not too familiar with the Eternals or Shang-Chi, so just quick little synopsis on both of those guys.
The Eternals were one of Jack Kirby's big return to Marvel stories. In the 70s, late 70s, he came back to Marvel after having gone off to DC and doing the New Gods stuff, writing Jimmy Olsen, creating Darkseid. He came back to Marvel, did Devil Dinosaur, did the Eternals. Was there another one he did there at Marvel, Dan?
Probably. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
Those are
you nailed most of them.
I know right away. Eternals originally was supposed to be its own thing. Jack Kirby just doing new age god superheroes. But
Jack Kirby doing Jack Kirby?
Yeah, Kirby doing Jack Kirby, yes. But only Jack Kirby can.
Yeah.
He was doing it as its own thing, but as time went on, it started to get folded into the Marvel Universe. More specifically, after it ended, there was a huge story arc in Thor that had him having adventures with a few of the Eternals characters.
Nice.
The story with them involves being part of... So for our listeners that have watched the movies and have wondered about those big, giant, semi-glowy, godlike alien things we see in places like Guardians of the Galaxy...
when they're doing their old style stuff, and where it was like the big guy taking over, like
the history of when they were showing the history of the Infinity Stones, and they're showing that flashback there. You see these big, giant, weird, armored humanoid things. They're the Celestials, and essentially they're like some of considered gods in the Marvel universe. There are a lot of what go around creating and destroying things,
Yeah,
right?
So what the head of what Nor was?
Yeah, that Nowhere. Yes, Nowhere is the head of a dead Celestial. Yes,
Okay.
I believe right now in the comics, the Avengers base is a dead Celestial.
Oh, really nice.
I believe so, or it was for a little while at least.
And is Galactus is a Celestial as well, or
No, he's something entirely different.
Oh, okay. I thought we'll get to him later.
We'll get to him.
Galactus will come later, but the Celestials, they're the things that go around the galaxy, sometimes seeding life, but other times where they find life on planets, they'll do things like introduce alternate branches to whatever the baseline race on that planet is. This has happened on other planets to varying degrees. On Earth, it resulted in the Eternals, which are the perfected humanoids, like ultimate evolutionary capacity, that sort of thing. And on the flip side, there were the Deviants, which were like more chaotic shapeshifter things.
It's also believed that they may have been what led to the creation of mutants. That their tweaking eventually caused mutants to happen later down the line.
Yeah, that's it seems to be more of an unintended consequence of what they've
exactly
done.
Yeah,
there's a lot of weird things going on Earth in the Marvel universe that we will see as time goes on. It's generally a stay away place. If you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and are familiar with the summation of Mostly Harmless,
not true in Marvel.
The Marvel Comics version of Earth is the complete opposite of that. It's generally a stay away. Don't come unless you're crazy or already know people here.
Every time aliens screw with Earth seems to slap them back pretty hard.
It gets to the point where during galactic debates about what to do with Earth, it's pointed out that the Phoenix Force calls Earth home. Galactus was turned away by Earth multiple times. There are just too many heavy hitters involved with that planet for us to really want to mess with.
Yeah, it's too much crazy shit there. Just leave it alone, and it's like that little shanty town on the side of the highway. Just shield your eyes and drive past, and don't do anything.
Yeah.
And what about Shang-Chi? Because I think they were going to bring in the actual 10 rings. And,
so Shang-Chi was back in the 70s. I'm trying to capitalize on the martial arts movie craze.
Yeah, because he's the best Marvel or the martial artist in Marvel, or
best human one. I again, even they state that in a fight, Iron Fist would beat him, but without powers, Shang-Chi would kick his ass.
Shang-Chi is a semi-fictionalized Bruce Lee of the Marvel universe.
How originally Iron Fist was a semi-fictionalized version of he was based to look after Chuck Norris.
Okay, so he's just like the pinnacle of martial arts without powers.
His story's got a little bit more interesting bits to it. Creator-wise, Jim Starlin did those first couple of issues. Marvel Super Special, I think, is where Shang-Chi first appears before going on to his own series. But that's, again, Jim Starlin. He is the bona fide genius creator who gave us Thanos and Drax and Gamora, among lots of other really cool things. But given how popular those three characters have been, cinematically speaking, it was cool that we got to see Jim Starlin in the Infinity War film.
Dan? One of the issues that they have, though, with the Shang-Chi, because we're getting a little far away from what the character is. He was originally the son of Fu Manchu, which is one of those characters they can't really use, and of course is also considered culturally insensitive at this point.
Yeah,
back to the golden age of comics as well.
Yeah,
you had the Sax Romers, old Fu Manchu pulp serials, the novels and such.
Now, I hear for the movie they're replacing his father with the Mandarin, which is a way they can finally bring him in, and it works. It works. I also hear the movie itself. The rumors are that it's about a tournament for the actual 10 rings. Some sort of martial arts tournament's being held, and Mandarin goes to Shang-Chi because he's so good to represent him in this tournament to get him the rings. And I've heard that we're going to see a lot of cameos from Marvel characters. Supposedly one of the contestants might even be Spiral from the Mojoverse. There's
Mojo.
The idea of what they're doing there has me interested, especially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And for Eternals, it's probably going to be used to show a lot of the history in the Marvel Universe and go back and explain things beforehand. So they can use that as a device to really get into more detail about things if they want.
Yeah, the Eternals are immortal. They've existed all throughout human history. So
and they have a Jack Kumail in there as well.
A what?
They have a Jack Kumail in there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys, you both saw that fucking picture, like from like.
Oh yeah, I saw that picture. He got into Marvel shape for that movie, like so many other actors have.
Absolutely.
I feel
again, the cast for Turtles looks pretty good. Like I'm definitely interested in the cast I have.
Yeah, so let's say both should prove interesting. And the second piece of news is that looks like Sam Jackson is coming back as Nick Fury for a Disney Plus show.
Yeah, I'm down for that. There's so many things they could do.
Yeah, exactly. Because he had Nick Fury had like a comic at one point, obviously, I think, but like by himself.
Oh, Nick Fury is one of the early Marvel comics.
So they have like
stuff from the '60s. Yeah, that was some of the more groundbreaking Marvel comics to come.
Yeah, the classic title with all those iconic Steranko covers that Marvel loves aping over and over again.
Yeah, not just the covers, his interior layouts. They were so much more dynamic than a lot of what you were seeing at the time.
Yeah,
and there were a lot of other dynamic artists at the time too. Like this is just something that stood out a little bit more than the already fantastic stuff being produced by them.
There it is. So it should be really nice. You can never go wrong, Sam Jackson. And this reminds me of like a buddy of mine from the cons that I go to. I just found out the other day that about the Nick Fury movie that buddy from Baywatch was in.
Oh yeah, I remember that being on TV back in the day.
Trying to watch it back then and just not getting into it when it was.
I vaguely remember it being a thing, but I obviously at the time I didn't know Nick Fury until like I saw as we discussed last week, the Spider-Man cartoon, and then he showed up, and I was like, oh, okay, that's who that was. I knew it was a thing. But I knew it wasn't be the best. And with Dave Hasselhoff, no offense if you're listening, David, but it didn't look like
he was good.
He wasn't the problem with it because I mean he figured he looked decent enough like Nick Fury that it wasn't a problem, right?
Yeah, but I expected it to be not great, so I never actually.
Yeah, well, again,
it was a TV movie. It had TV movie production qualities. That was the big flaw for so many of those.
Yeah, true enough. Same with like the Hulk movies, like where they had like Thor show up in the second.
But I mean, those were basically continuations of the show, so they weren't really much better than that, right?
And like the Generation X movie, where there's so much heart to it, but the special effects are really low tier, very low.
That movie would have helped with a bigger budget to at least throw like Huston Chamber in there,
Yeah.
Well, not even that. Just giving a little bit more oomph to what they had on screen.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still love that movie, and I have like 3 copies of it here in my room. So, I mean, I've got an actual legit copy of that on VHS, which is like probably the rarest thing I'm going to have in this room.
David Hasselhoff turned out to be taller than I thought because he walked by me at a con one time. He's like 6'5" or 6'6" or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I figured he was tall, but like
Yeah. It totally caught me off guard. I just kind of looked over, like, oh, and that was like the one thing I wasn't gonna be like, hey, Mitch or whatever, but it was like that just caught me off guard. Yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's always surprising when you see that. I think when Avery Brooks walked by me at the one con, he was a little smaller than I expected him to be. Not much, but a bit. And then I saw Leslie Nielsen, and he's exactly the size you'd expect him to be.
Then like I think it was not last year, but the year before, Fagan walked by Momoa, and he's only got like an inch and a half on me, so he's not that much bigger than me. Well, obviously he's bulked out bigger because I fucking don't work out.
He's significantly wider than you are, Adam.
Sorry.
He's significantly.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. So and Paul, he's probably stand up straight because he had like proper back muscles and stuff. So.
Leslie Nielsen was definitely stooped when we saw him.
Yeah. When I saw him, he was definitely getting,
Oh yeah.
You could tell he was shuffling along. He still had the great, the twinkle in his eye. He was pretty happy, and smiling at people and waving at everybody walking around. But you could tell he was definitely getting older.
Yeah. That's always rough. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But for this week, folks, as we were initially going to get a bit more into the Marvel's history last week, but we kind of didn't and whatnot. So I think we're just discuss that a little bit more this week. So I didn't really start with Marvel Comics proper. It was like Timely Comics first.
Yeah. Back in 1939, publisher Martin Goodman ended up getting into the comics game and started Timely Comics. So it goes way back to that point.
Yeah.
But furthermore than that, Marvel Comics was basically their first issue.
Yeah, like Marvel #1, right?
Yep. Where they introduced the original Human Torch and Namor, and
we got on the cover this month the Human Torch, an incarnation still in use to this day.
And just to be clear, it's not the Fantastic Four Human Torch.
No,
a different character.
Entirely different character.
Yeah.
We'll quickly go through this issue because there's a lot in here that will continue to fuel Marvel creative for decades to come. Like, again, just on the cover, Human Torch, the Angel.
But not the X-Men Angel.
No, not the X-Men Angel, but again, like we will see namesakes used, and we will see these characters eventually recycled in various incarnations. Submariner, same incarnation that we are still enjoying to this very day. Like,
yes, Namor, the Marvel's Aquaman, I guess, or Granny was first, so I guess Aquaman is.
There's a fair bit of comparison between the two, both monarchs of Atlantis, both.
They're both companies like. Similarity, I guess, or whatever.
There's several of those all throughout the history of both companies.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it's more of what they did with these characters in the issues and years to come that really made the difference. We also got featuring Kazar the Great, 12 pages of Jungle Adventure. Kazar, character that they recycled in the 70s moving forward. Jungle Adventure, that was recycled to be the vehicle for one of Black Panther's earliest solo stories. Not Jungle Adventure, Jungle Tales. Jungle Adventures, that has been reused somewhere, but now it's slipping me. When we go through the first issue, we got the very first Human Torch story by Carl Burgos. This is the Jim Hammond incarnation of Human Torch. When you follow through his history after, the 50s, moving on into the 60s, what happens in the early days of the Marvel timeline, it gets weird, it gets retconned. But ultimately, this is a character who does come back and plays a part in the modern Marvel universe a few times.
Yep.
He's an early android, artificial humanoid created back in the... I think for his timeline, he's actually created in story in like the early 30s. But there's a flaw in his skin. When he comes into contact with oxygen, his skin just bursts into a non-consumable flame. Like it doesn't burn him, but it is still a flame that will catch other consumable things on fire. On the first demonstration, like a World's Fair kind of thing, which we do see a quick call out to in Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yep, he has this little cameo there.
During a crowd shot of the World's Fair, you can see there is a display capsule in the middle of the crowd, and standing in it, inert, is the Jim Hammond Human Torch.
Yeah, which I always thought was kind of funny because Chris Evans was the Fantastic Four version of Human Torch in the Fantastic Four movies, which is always funny.
Nice little call out there.
Yeah.
But crowd reaction when what was the guy's name? Erskine. When his creator, Professor Erskine...
No, it wasn't Erskine, no.
No, Erskine was the super soldier form.
Yeah, exactly.
I should have pulled
Hammond. No, it wasn't Hammond. No, Everett. No, Hammond. What was it? I literally just read it today.
Yeah. I should have.
I literally just read it like an hour ago. How did I not remember it?
Anyways, the Zero issue of Horton. There it is. Professor Horton.
There, that was it.
Yeah, no, Horton, when he demonstrates to the crowd, hey, here's this added little feature he can do, the crowd freaks out and declares Human Torch a menace. So he's buried in concrete and given an oral education. He's got headphones on that tells him about the world, but doesn't allow him to see or experience anything.
Oh, so he's actually still alive and shit in case So he has like headphones. He's like, "Oh, this is what's going on this week."
It didn't even encase him underground. Just we're clear on that. They just built a wood frame and filled it up with concrete and put this capsule with him inside of it. So he's not even like buried under the ground or anything like that.
Yeah,
he's just like in like Times Square or just chilling out somewhere.
Like just chilling in some guy's like backyard. Like I think it was like the property of his creator, I think, or something like that.
In case of anything, it just has a little finger in the front. In case of anything, do not open this.
Yeah, like when he breaks out in the middle of the night, the professor wakes up and is like, "Oh no! Like, what was there like a leak in the thing? Like, how did he get out?"
My God, that was the Human Torch's tomb. Could he have been destroyed?
Yeah.
Find out next week, folks.
Dialogue.
Exactly.
Well, no, it continues on. This one.
He ends up getting found by a criminal who decides he's going to get into racketeering by, using Human Torch to burn down places if they don't give him insurance money for fire.
Oh, for like protection each week.
Exactly. And of course, the first, which I don't quite understand in the plan, because they leave him at the building and then they literally just leave him there. So how are you going to redo this over and over again if you just leave your device there, right?
Well, you're saying, you think it'd be like, here, you do your thing and then leave, like, where you're just like, did you just stay there after the fire started?
Yeah, no, they literally just they brought him in like a capsule and they threw something out to break it and they ran away and they just kind of left him there. So he figures out what they're doing, so he goes back and goes after them, and then around this point, he's starting to learn how to properly use his powers, how to throw fireballs. How he can leap like really high, like Superman originally did.
Yeah, no, by the end of the story, he's demonstrated to the police that he has control over these flame abilities. He shows a sense of remorse over the damage he's caused. He wants to make right by this. So, if I recall correctly, his human alter ego, not that he's switches into a human, but his civilian identity is employed as a police officer, if I recall correctly.
All right.
Next story in it, we've got the Angel, who's
a Superman rip off, basically.
Yeah, he can fly.
Superman with a mustache.
Yeah, he's got
as he goes.
angel wings on his cape or on his chest, but he's got a red cape. He's just not a very eye-catching.
Yeah. Nondescript powers. Like, it seems like he might be able to fly. He might just be leaping. He seems to be super strong, and nothing seems to hurt him. Like he fights a bunch of gangsters. It's not much else to it, really.
Yeah, it's about an 8-page story here. Compared to the previous Human Torch story, it's at least the printing here in the anniversary issue is a little bit not as colorful, really. There's a little bit too much browns and yellows mixed together in this kind of murky shade, and the same goes with like blues and purples on other pages. The whole story is just not as eye-catching. So
they didn't quite how to put the quite colors to make it pop yet.
I would assume so. Based on the color representation on the other pages that I see here, it's a newer, glossier print, but they don't appear to have changed inherently what's going on. I haven't compared it to scans from the original copy, of course. But the next story we've got The Submariner by Bill Everett, somebody who is still continuing to do work for Marvel by the time we get to the initial Marvel days, co-creator of Daredevil along with Stan Lee. Continues to do some Submariner work on in the 60s when they reintroduce him into the modern Marvel age.
Did you guys watch The Boys?
I haven't got into it yet. The wife wants to start it.
Yeah, I've read the entire comic run myself. But
okay,
yeah, we've read the entire comic. Make that clear. We've read the entire comic.
Is it just me, or is this like the water guy? Is that like a kind of ripoff of Namor's costume, or is that one of Aquaman's costumes? Because I always thought he looked more like Submariner than he was of.
Yeah, Aaron, the Deep looks very, very different in the show from the comic.
Yeah, from what little bits and pieces I've seen, it
seems like a bit of a mix of certain ones to me, because he's kind of got the sort of weird vest thing that Namor wore, but it looks very different.
But I guess it's just the actor. I guess that made me think that because obviously the 7 is
the Justice League. Yeah,
in the comic book, the Deep's costume is deliberately stupid. Like he's got like, have you seen
a deep sea diver, like an 1800 or 19th century deep sea diver
helmet? But have you seen the wrestler MVP? You know how he's got like the long sleeves, but like the short legs and the fully covered body.
Okay.
Yeah, the Deep's got like a costume kind of like that with a cape, and then when you've got this stupid diving bell helmet that he claims he can't take it off due to some sort of Atlantean curse. Like it's so ridiculous. You kind of want to see them do it on the show, but at the same time, like it just wouldn't be fair to the actor to long term have them in that sort of a stupid getup.
Yep.
Come
at
on,
the
these
same
guys
time,
have
we're
to
being
have
players.
lives outside of the show. They can't be ridiculed for this crap all the time. Yeah, getting back to the Submariner one. Again, we've got some really interesting artwork with this. When you go back to the golden age of comics in the late 30s, early to mid 40s, you get a lot of varying styles when it comes to depictions of faces and human bodies, because there really wasn't a whole lot of previous. There weren't other comics for the creators to go from, like, oh, this is what's popular, I'm going to do that. Like, this isn't the 90s where, Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, and the others are doing their particular,
like Rob Liefeld with
your
no lead.
mileage may vary styles.
And it's not like, Japan when manga started, where one person influenced almost everybody at the start of it, right?
Yeah.
It happens very differently in North America.
For approaching this from a cinematic perspective, if you remember the Dick Tracy movie that came out just after the Batman movie in 1989,
with
that one was a big
Warren
hit.
Beatty and stuff.
The character
Warren Beatty one.
designs in that, all those villains that we got those great action figures of, all those weird faces that were like great actors hidden under bizarre, grotesque makeup, that's par for the course for the golden age of comic books. The sort of villains you'd see, the sort of caricatures. So when you get to this Namor comic, there's a certain sleekness and regal approach given to the Namor character that even today, it's not very dated artwork when you look at Namor himself. Some of the stuff around him, like depictions of like the civilians, the boats and stuff, that definitely puts it back in the 30s. But Namor himself, like he's very much a well-designed character. Like, and when you get to like some of the more detail-prone shots of like a panel with just his face, like the arch to his eyebrows, the long slanted cheekbones that you could cut yourself on, and the pointed ears, like it's a very distinct image that they give to him. And next to him here in this same page, we've got a native Atlantean, the blue-skinned ones that they play with the whole racism angle sometimes.
So that's with that image of him, that's what made me think of the boys guy, because you just give him pointed ears and it kind of looked the same, I would think.
That's definitely a trademark more of Namor than Aquaman. Aquaman doesn't appear to, or not. He doesn't show any distinctly Atlantean traits from his race. Namor, he doesn't have the blue skin typical of Atlanteans in the Marvel universe because he is a half-breed human. But all the other features, the little fins on the ankles that are so often mistaken for wings, the arched eyebrows, the ears, these are all typical for all Atlanteans in Marvel. Moving on through the story here, it's got some great more character arc or character depictions. We got the Masked Rider, Western comic. Western comics, they did have a bit of a flourish in the 50s once the Comics Code of Authority starts to outlaw more of the crime and horror elements. Westerns become a little bit more easy to fit within the parameters of the code. But for the 1940s, 1930s, you're better off looking at the more iconic ones at this point. It's just red tunicked cowboy guy with a black mask and a white hat. Covers his whole face so as not to confuse him with the Lone Ranger. Jungle terror, explorers in a jungle region dealing with natives. Just a quick flip through. It's fairly typical Indiana Jones kind of looking for treasure. Oh no, we've underestimated what these natives are capable of. Oh, we have to escape. Then we get to Adventures of Kazar the Great.
It's Kazar. That sounds familiar. I think I've seen that.
Now, the Kazar that you're probably familiar with is the Marvel Universe one, which isn't exactly the same as this one. This one, they retweaked him to make him...
not Kevin Plundar.
Is David Rand.
Yeah.
David.
Is
it like Danny Rand or...
Coincidence.
Coincidence.
Yeah,
this guy's the child of Constance and John Rand.
He didn't crash he doesn't end up in the Savage Land. He ends up in Africa somewhere.
Yeah, and
was he down by the rains?
Well, at least in this instance, the guy's parents aren't killed, and he's not left to be raised by gorillas or raised by a pack of wolves.
At first.
Yeah, at first, yeah. Things don't go so well. But yeah, raised in the jungle, learning all these crazy skills. Visually, you can clearly see that he and Kevin Plundar are not the same character. Curly blonde hair with a curly blonde beard.
Curly, white guy.
Very curly. But that's the cap off for that issue. That is the start of Marvel Comics, and like a good half of what's in there is still stuff that's relevant in the comics. More or less.
That was like what? That was 1939.
Yeah, 1939. It cover date in October.
Showing cover date.
Yeah.
But the practice of the time was to. Well, the fact that it's actually listed as a number 1 is unusual at the time because it was found that.
Because those more just like the
first issues, unlike nowadays, first issues didn't sell so well. This was a brand new thing. Why should I spend my money on this if it's a brand new, untested venture? Oh, but look, hey, they've got issue 9 of this other book. Wow, they must have something to show for it if they're up to issue 9. I'll try this one out. So there's examples of comics that start off arbitrarily on later issue numbers. And by the same token of that, we have publication dates pushed up and up so that certain books are kept on the shelves longer than other books, so as to take a little bit more real estate. There's a lot of battles back and forth between different publishing companies and different comic book companies over the decades over how much space you can take up on the newsstands. I believe Marvel and DC were taken to court over it once, or at least threatened with it. There was a time when they were publishing a glut of what many would say were mediocre titles just to have all of their more...
Just to take up more real estate on the shelves?
Yeah, if there's more of their stuff on the shelves, it's pushing out this other stuff which is selling more and more copies based on the quality of their books rather than, recognizable characters. Well, this character was hot in this comic, so let's give him his own story. And then that way we can, maybe push Nexus off the shelves in this retailer. That's a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah, going off right there.
back on to the old timely stuff. As you continue on, if you start looking through a lot of what they had, you'll see more and more examples of characters and ideas that do get brought back into the modern Marvel age.
I mean, they created Captain America. That's when it started back in the timely days.
And how long did that Marvel title run for? Do you know?
It in various ways it continued for many years. Issue 2 was retitled Marvel Mystery Comics. Stayed that way up until the end of the 40s. And then as it moved over to the 50s, it became just Marvel Tales, the first incarnation of Marvel Tales. Later during the modern Marvel era, which is generally what we'll be referring to it in the post Fantastic Four era, Marvel Tales is resurrected as a reprint title for Spider-Man. Once Marvel Team Up reaches its conclusion, they I believe it's Marvel Tales that they use to fill the roster. And at the time and for the years to come afterwards, it was one of the easiest ways or one of the cheaper ways to get a lot of the older comics that had start to rise in price or become a little bit more difficult to obtain. The success of the Marvel Tales reprints is one of the things that led to the X-Men Classic reprints that allowed Daniel easy access to so much of those early excellent Chris Claremont stories. And included some great backup stories along the way as well.
Oh, it did. It really did.
Yeah, so again, there's just based on the title alone, how long the legacy has continued. Not only that, but Marvel has used the alternate Marvel Tales, as in the anatomical detail, for some of their funny animal stuff. Marvel Tales, TAILS, is the first appearance of everybody's now favorite Spider-Man, Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham.
Oh, the Spider Pig.
Yeah.
So that wasn't just
Spider Pig is a distinctly Simpsons character.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Spider Ham is the
Spider Ham
Marvel character.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen Into the Spider? Adam, have you seen Into the Spider-Verse yet?
I did once when it first came out. It's one I've been meaning to watch again recently. This is something I haven't watched in a while.
Okay, it was good.
Yeah, did he show up in it?
Yep, John Mulaney voiced him, I believe.
Oh, he was one of the major players in the comic book Spider-Verse crossover.
Oh, he was a major player in the movie too.
Well, yeah, like it was.
I've got to rewatch that then. Because it's been a while. I don't remember that.
Nah.
Which is weird.
It's just fun to say Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham.
Yeah, it is.
Peter Porker.
Oh, those puns.
But yeah, Marvel with their timely stuff. Things continue on. We've got Human Torch and Submariner are already in play, and we've got Simon and Kirby, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Stan Lee does not have anything to do with the initial creation of Captain America. The Golden Age stuff, as in his position as editor of Timely Comics, yeah, he would have been editing the Captain America stories, but he's not a creator of Captain America. That sometimes gets misconstrued here and there.
He came up with the round shield. That was his contribution to it,
and that had more to do with the fact that that specific shape of shield was an infringement on a different pre-existing character's logo. So they had to change that shield in order to make Captain America that much more distinct from other patriotic American super soldier characters. But with those three, Timely has what DC has, the big three. DC's got Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Timely's got Captain America, Namor, and Submariner.
Nice.
Before all three get hooked up, there's a series of stories involving
That'd
Captain
be a
America,
sexy three-way. Yeah.
America's
Sorry,
ass, and what would you define the other two as? What would their porn names be? We'll leave it up to the listeners to decide.
Yes.
But, there's some battles between the Human Torch and Namor the Submariner. You got the water and the fire elements going at each other. These are best depicted for modern readers in the early issues of Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross's Marvels.
Alex Ross.
Yeah, if you want to get an introduction to the Marvel Universe as a fan, Marvels is an actual excellent book to read to get that whole early Marvel, what was going on, the overall story of it all.
Snapshot. It encompasses the. Fine, come on. Sorry, my cat decides he wants to join us.
Nice.
Marvels is a nice snapshot of what encompasses the Marvel Universe in the early days. It's actually relevant to what we're talking about right now because the story of Phil Sheldon, he's a young photographer in New York in the 1930s. The feeling of the people at the time is that something big is coming. There's an energy. One of the people that Phil Sheldon grew up with was Nick Fury. Nick feels it too. He's ready to go off and join the service because when things happen, he wants to be in a position where he can make a difference. And Phil gets it, but he's not a fighter. But he's good with a camera. So when the initial battles between the Human Torch and the Submariner break out, he's in a great position to be able to help document what's going on.
So he's like Jimmy Olsen or Peter Parker before.
Yep.
Peter Parker does come into play, and based on how Peter portrayed his civilian/business persona, Phil Sheldon does not like Peter Parker. He thinks he's a Weasley little shit. The way Peter makes money off of those Spider-Man pictures, and the fact that all Peter's pictures look like they were either shot through gauze or like he just stuck the camera to the side of the wall and set it on automatic. Like, why does he keep getting jobs? Why is he still making all this money? The little punk.
Fuck that little kid.
Yeah. Anyways, Phil, he's in the perfect position to document this burgeoning age of heroes. He's there when the policewoman, I forget her name off the top of my head. Major supporting character for Namor, but she brokers a peace deal between the Human Torch and Namor so that they're on good terms with each other. World War II breaks out, and they meet up with Captain America overseas in the Eastern Front to, do what they can. These stories are outside of the Golden Age comics and the modern stuff. You can find those adventures in The Invaders, which is a great series. Roy Thomas has contributed so many great things to the comic industry, and one of the things is bringing back so many of these Golden Age characters. With his work on The Invaders, he's going back and telling the Marvel Comics versions of what was happening back in World War II with these three characters and the other different heroes that would join them. This allows him to kind of correct a few continuity errors that may have come into play throughout the various eras of comic book storytelling. It lets him shine a light on stories that... there's what you got there. It shines a light on various characters and stories that may have otherwise fallen by the wayside and been forgotten by the other comic fans. And even reintroduce characters to modern audiences. One of my favorite stories from The Invaders, though, is a tie-in to one of the characters that beloved Marvel character that didn't exist during the Golden Age, Thor. There is in Invaders a World War II Thor story. So much fun. Hitler summons Thor. Hitler summons Thor and convinces Thor, outright lies to Thor and claims that the invaders are
Hitler?
No, yeah.
Never.
An honest soul like Hitler? No. So he convinces Thor that the invaders are the bad guys and that they're trying to conquer what would be, soil native to Thor's worshippers. Because we've seen throughout Thor comics in the years to come that, there are different cultures that still worship him as a god, that literally do pray to him.
Yeah.
And, he can respond to these prayers. So this is typically that sort of thing where invaders are threatening my people. Okay, that seems like a cause I can get behind. Let me see what I can do about this. And he kicks the crap out of the invaders. He's just on a power level that they can't deal with. They do eventually convince him the error of his ways. But yeah, Thor in the Golden Age.
They retcon Thor into a lot of older Marvel stuff that it seems to work almost every time they do it, right? I mean, having him fight Apocalypse, that's great.
Really? Yeah, when did that happen?
10th century, I believe. It happened in a Thor comic, one of the Thor's solo title that came out several years back. We found out that the two of them got into a fight, and Thor did something he shouldn't have to beat him, and that led to problems much, much later down the line.
As it does.
Always does.
Thousands of years old, and I think has been reborn a couple times.
Yeah, because he was dead during the first Civil War at some point.
Yeah, it's not just that. I think Ragnarok might have happened.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's a cycle. Right? It's a cycle. Ragnarok happens again and again. Apparently, it's a cycle.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. Ragnarok was right before. That's what happened. Yeah, that's right. Because I didn't know about that beforehand. So I was like, why is Thor dead? And then.
Really, the reason was if they left Thor and Hulk on the playing board for Civil War, it would have really changed the game a lot.
Exactly.
When you start analyzing certain crossovers and certain events throughout the years, you'll start to notice these chess-like moves. During the Onslaught crossover, in the ads leading up to it, Daniel and I noticed that Ghost Rider had been listed as one of the accompanying titles with what was happening because, the 90s Ghost Rider was set in New York.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you know it, during the exact events of Onslaught, Ghost Rider's off in Jersey City dealing with something out of town. And Daniel and I, discussing it at the time, realized that, with Ghost Rider's Penance Stare, and with his power level in general, not much would have stopped him from getting his hands on Onslaught. And
for those who don't know who Onslaught is, just
oh well, we shouldn't spoil
like
that. That's
but that's an X-Men thing later on. That's when
we get to the idea of the Heroes Reborn and all that, we'll definitely have to get into Onslaught.
That was at the end. That was at the end of Fatal Attractions, right? Wasn't it?
Oh no! It goes earlier than that.
Or Shadow, I think.
Back to a fill-in issue. Actually, technically the first appearance of Onslaught would be Uncanny X-Men 106, I believe, where it's a filler issue where the X-Men get attacked by like an evil Xavier, and it's like Xavier's evil side attacking them, and that is technically the first appearance of Onslaught. Technically.
Yeah, but it wasn't something about that at the end of Fatal Attraction, or just
when he wiped Magneto's mind. Something left Magneto and went to Xavier. Something broke at Xavier.
Okay. So
they've retconned it again recently with House of X, whereas it turns out that Moira's long-term plan from when she and Xavier first met up to what's going on with the X-Men stuff now, she had to break the goodness and kindness in Xavier, and one of the things she worried about was that it could create something far worse, which it did, which was Onslaught.
Oh, okay.
But again, we'll find out more about that whenever they finally get into the Moira comic that's supposed to come. Hopefully,
and we can cover more details about that when we get up to that.
Yeah. I can't talk about too much X-Men stuff right now because it's so far from where X-Men started at this point that it's so much to get into. So much.
I know. Getting into X-Men is so daunting.
Well, that's the thing. At this point, Adam, it's really easy because all you have to do is pick up House of X and Powers of 10, because it doesn't matter so much what came beforehand because they've kind of just started fresh and new and going forward from that.
It's what they generally call a new jumping on point for new readers.
But everything since then's been all nice and cohesive and fitting together, and some of it's been really good, some of it's been kind of pointless. But all around, I've been loving it.
That's us.
Yeah.
So when we continue on through the history of the Marvel Universe, we got for the most of the 40s, the focus of all the superhero comics are on the war effort, either dealing with the crime elements that are trying to take advantage of what's going on in the world on the home front, or taking the fight to the Axis powers in various factions of the war. Now, it's a product of the times. But following the 1940s, superheroes just don't hold the same appeal. So Marvel, or Timely, and other companies have to start diversifying much of their output in order to retain readership. They need to start giving readers more than just the capes and the tights action. So we start to see funny animal comic books, like cartoon-based stuff, specifically crime-based. This is when we get to the era where EC Comics starts off with their Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, all that kind of stuff. That's where the real popularity starts to lie. Marvel is not on top of the game at this point. They're staying active. There's still stuff from the late 40s and the 50s that they're utilizing today.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of romance stuff at the time, a lot of westerns, things like that.
And some of the romance stuff is still relevant today. Patsy Walker was one of their big romance titles from the late 40s, mid to late 40s. Yeah. And the way those comics figure into the modern Marvel era is Patsy Walker is a character in the Marvel Universe. She is nowadays, or for most of her career, has been the superhero Hellcat. It's not what she started as, but it fits. The deal with the Patsy Walker Golden Age comics is that Patsy in the Marvel Universe is a stand-in for that child celebrity who's being controlled and manipulated by their parent.
Adam, did you ever watch the Jessica Jones show?
I did.
Yeah, so Patsy Walker, her Jessica's best friend, Patsy. It's all that story right there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and you never watched Jessica Jones, did you, Aaron? That's one of Patsy's character traits in it, is that she was a child star, and her mom is a bitch.
Yeah, that's the way it is in the comic book series. Is that Patsy was forced to, among other things, be the star of this comic book that has somewhat colored her reputation after all this time. But that's one of those things from that era that still relevant today. Millie the Model, I think they've revised a couple times as well. She was another one of the romance female reader type comics. Namora and Venus are a couple from the same era that got picked back up Venus. In Agents of Atlas.
Fire your desire.
A little Bananarama there for you.
Just a little bit. Sorry.
Just a little bit.
But as they continue on there, superheroes, again, they're just not bringing in the bread. It seems that pretty much with the end of Captain America, they cut off the timely branding. Just reading here, the last couple of issues of Captain America were branded Captain America's Weird Tales, and they were just like horror suspense stories that didn't even have superheroes in them.
Oh, so you're like who got set loose in the German forest and just went crazy?
No, not even that.
It's a werewolf story. We'll just throw it in Captain America so we get it out there somehow.
Captain America gone dark.
Yeah, things like that. Submariner and Human Torch had both ended before the 1940s were finished. Marvel Tales had switched into a horror anthology after dropping their that Angel character that was there for Marvel Comics #1. It just kind of fizzles out at that point. But they do continue on under the brand Atlas. This is the period of the 50s where they're just mainly continuing what they ended off the 40s with. There is still a bit of superhero stuff here and there, reprints of some older stories. Golden Age comics, I have to admit, are not my repertoire. There's interesting stuff there, no doubt, but for my era of collecting, it's always been so hard to not even afford Golden Age comics, just to locate them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as an example, our local comic book store that Daniel and I grew up reading at, Dixon's Comics, when they closed, I was helping them out, doing what I could to make sure they were still making money in their last couple of months. And when I was sorting and organizing stuff I was finding in the back, I actually found like 3 Golden Age comics back there. And when I looked them up, they were all like Canadian edition of Disney stuff. And like from the beginning of the 40s, or beginning of the 50s. And even in the condition they were like $10 to $15 comics. And this is me finding them as an adult in my late 20s. Not, as a kid, as I'm looking to gather up more in my collection. Like the only Golden Age stuff that I personally own are like, I think I've got a Dick Tracy collection. I've got the first one of the Fletcher Hanks collections that I think Fantagraphics put out. And a couple of Pogo collections, actually. Those technically count. In my book, they count. If it's in a comic strip format, you collect it in a book, it's still a graphic novel.
I only have Silver Age, nothing further than that.
Yeah. So as we continue on, we do see that some stuff like Patsy Walker, as previously mentioned, they're continuing on. Yellow Claws, an espionage series that they had started around the 50s, give or take. That one actually comes into play a bit later on in the Marvel modern era. It's not a culturally representative book. Just from the title alone, you can probably already feel yourself cringing. But they do kind of redeem it a little bit in Agents of Atlas. The Shield agent Jimmy Woo is the son of the Yellow Claw, and when he finally learns the truth of his inheritance and legacy and all that, his father explains like, nah, that Yellow Claw crap, that was just an image I put on because that was expected at the time. That was the sort of caricature I could enact to get my point across and get some attention. It was just a lark, which, as far as explanations go, you're not going to find much better for something like that. Agents of Atlas comic was quite an excellent series. it's a really good snapshot of what was going on in the 50s with Marvel. It's probably exorbitant expensive at this point, but there's a Marvel Premier Edition hardcover of that first Agents of Atlas miniseries. It's full of bonus content in it. The whole ARG thing that they were doing to promote the comic book throughout the various websites is included. And the first appearances of all the involved characters is also there. We've got M11, the human robot, Venus, who they tweak her origin a bit because of all the development with the various pantheons of the Marvel Universe. Her Golden Age stories didn't really jive with some of the way things were developed. So they come up with an interesting way to justify her identity as Venus and how she came upon it. Again, we got Jimmy Woo representing S.H.I.E.L.D., putting all these clues together. The Gorilla Man was from a story in the old suspense and horror tales. He was a hunter who killed this legendary gorilla that supposedly had the intelligence of a human. Well, when he killed it, he found out that it was a magical curse, and he became the Gorilla Man next.
Oh, yeah.
These 50s characters, they were first brought together in an issue of What If the Avengers had existed but during the 50s. And they take all these 50s era characters, put them together on a team. We've got the 3D Man, who was not originally published in the 50s. He's a Marvel character from the 70s whose adventures originated back in the 50s. It's been a while since I've read them, but I think it was kind of the Marvel version of the Roswell crash. The 3D Man and his descendant Triathlon in the Avengers. Their powers were derived from a crashed Skrull flying saucer or something. He's involved. Namora, Namor's cousin, the one who had been supposedly dead since the 50s, Namorita's mother. Namorita of the New Warriors, who was supposedly killed off during the kickoff to Civil War. Her mother, she's one of the 50s characters that's brought back in Agents of Atlas. Her first appearance is included, another Bill Everett story, I believe. There's some really good 50s comics included in that, but again, that collection's probably more than $100 nowadays.
But we're also running into one of the big problems in the 50s coming up pretty soon here with, did you ever hear about how the Comics Code Authority was formed?
So the Comics Code, no,
yeah,
I did not. Go ahead.
So, for all of our readers that aren't aware of what the Comics Code of Authority was, it ran from about 1954 until, I'm not exactly sure when they finally gave up entirely.
Sometime in the
early 2000s, I think, around 2001 maybe.
It got to the point where only Archie was submitting their stuff to the code, and even then it was just kind of a courtesy thing.
The code itself was self-censorship by the comics industry to basically ensure that the government wasn't going to come in and censor for them. Back in 1954, some senator decided to do a Senate meeting about juvenile delinquency in the United States and what was causing juvenile delinquency. And they ended up getting this German-American psychiatrist on there named Frederick Wertham. And he is one of the most infamous people involved in comics because he stood up in front of the Senate and said that, that comics are 100% leading towards juvenile delinquency.
Here's a book I wrote all about it. Go out and buy a copy.
Yeah, a book that he had just released, too. And he did things like he went to juvenile halls and things, and he would talk to all the kids there and asked, hey, who have you read, who have you don't? And then he would take the kids who read off, and he would go, okay, which one of you read comics? And, of course, all of them read comics, as back in those days, comics were produced so much, everybody read them. Yeah. But, of course, that's correlation, causation. It didn't matter to him. It proved his point.
Yeah.
Bad kids read comics. Comics make bad kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah, look at us. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. We're terrible people, eh? But it also didn't help the fact that within the industry, the one person they had really that was mostly defending them really didn't know what he was doing.
Max Gaines, I believe it was, son of William Gaines, publisher for EC
Brother
Comics.
Of Chris Gaines. Sorry,
But,
go ahead.
EC Comics, they started off doing educational stuff. But once the Sun took over, he started to exploit the public's desire for a little bit more sensational fare. Gave us Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, and a bunch of other crime and suspense type stories. These were among the most popular comics of the day, so therefore the ones that got the most attention. As I understand it, Mr. Gaines had a little bit of a drug problem, not like, recreationally, but, relying on stuff like speed just to, keep your energy up. And he was suffering from effects when he was on the stand. And is sometimes a little bit rambling, sometimes a little bit incoherent, but he's being led on by the questions presented to him. One particular exchange actually covered in Rick Veitch's superhero series Max Immortal. Almost word for word, it's used in there. Different characters, though, because it's slightly fictionalized. But Max Gaines has shown a picture of one of the more famous covers of Tales from the Crypt. A shot of a gentleman roughly mid-torso down to mid-thigh, and in one hand he's holding a severed woman's head with a little trickle of blood dripping from her lips, her eyes rolled back, and in the other hand an axe with a bit of blood on it. And the question posed was, does this image appear to be in good taste? And, well, in any nuanced discussion, good taste is subjective. But this is, court Senate hearings. You got to be a little bit more sound in your arguments.
You think it would make more sense for him to point out that, no, it's a horror comic. It's not supposed to be good taste, but that's horror for you.
Started.
Yeah.
That's where he started. He was admitted, if for selling a horror comic, I feel like this is appropriate. And then he just starts getting picked apart over this. How can you, as a publisher, say that this horrific image is appropriate? And he's like, well, it could be worse. And, that just opened up a new line of questioning.
It just explains how worse it could be.
What do you mean by worse? And he elaborates on how the gore and sensationalism of the cover can all be, enhanced in various ways. And this does not help his argument at all. And it's in part how horribly he botched his testimony that led to the self-censorship. The powers that be didn't really see much else that they could do and still be the powers.
Yeah, it was basically the best out of any choices they had was this. And I mean, it changed everything. We're no longer getting horror comics. There was extreme limits on what you couldn't have in comics. At this point,
the code outlawed basically any word that had been used in an EC Comics title: terror, suspense, crime, horror. All of those are verboten. You cannot use any sort of word like that. Any depictions of crime, have to be entirely wholesome. You can't depict law enforcement in a negative light. Cannot depict drugs in any fashion. Oh, and supernatural creatures, right out the window. The most that anybody could get away with doing throughout the late 50s to 60s was giant monster stuff like King Kong, Godzilla, things like that.
The rumors were that the X-Men character Sauron was created because they couldn't just use normal vampires. That's a rumor. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, it runs with what's going on.
Similar rumors surround Morbius, whether or not he was developed the way he was to get around the supernatural restrictions. He's a scientifically created vampire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he has the suckers on his hands and takes plasma instead of sucking blood through.
Well, at least in the Spider-Man cartoon.
Or is that only the cartoon? Okay.
That was only the cartoon. Yeah, in the comics, he drinks blood.
He does. Okay, fangs. He does rip open throats.
Oh, okay. That's my
subdued in the 70s issues. But by the time you get to the 90s, you got the Anne Rice blood dripping angsty fangs.
Yeah. But anyway, because of this, the industry had to look at how they were doing things, and we got a lot more romance comics, things like that. Superheroes, which were dying off at the time, got a new resurgence. DC Comics had their new version of The Flash, and it was wildly successful. So
this should be pointed out. This is after several years of language.
Trying a few things, Trying a few things.
Restrictions of the code.
Even then, I think Flash was 50. Was it 56 or 59?
59, I believe, is when the Flash had its big breakthrough, and not long afterwards for Green Lantern. This is the Barry Allen Flash and the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. New incarnations of what had previously been unrelated Golden Age characters.
Oh no, Flash was 1956.
56, okay.
Yep. October 56. He first appeared showcase number 4.
Julie Schwartz doing the red costume instead of the old Mercury inspired getup that Alan Scott. No, not Alan Scott. That was Green Lantern.
Yeah. Jay Garrick.
Jay Garrick, yeah. Jay Garrick.
But this did eventually to the Marvel Universe because I mean they had books that were getting really popular over in DC. You know, they did Challengers of the Unknown, which was really, really popular.
Justice League, a big runaway success for them. It was fairly unprecedented because it wasn't a revamp of anything that had previously been a huge hit. The way
and Justice League were. They finally put together Batman, Superman, Flash, Green Lantern, and it became a big title there, Justice League, which was selling like mad, which led to Martin Goodman having all these other titles that their competition had. He came to Stan Lee and said, "Hey, we got to come up with something new, some new team book. Team books are popular. Come up with something and let's get it out there."
So Stan was not too thrilled about this.
Stan was pretty much done writing comics anyway, considering he never intended to make that as a career in the first place. He wanted to be a legit journalist.
And not so much that, but at this point, he's getting really fed up with the formulaic nature of how these comics are being made. They're all... They haven't grown or changed to any significant degree over the long years. He's tired of it. He wants to move on to something new. So he's quite famously, he's telling his wife that he's ready to quit. They won't let him do comics that he wants to do. He's stuck being asked to do this new cash-in, copying what the other guys have done. He's ready to quit. So his wife gives him the wonderful advice. Well, if you're thinking of quitting and you just want to do it your own way, do it your own way. What are they going to do? Fire you? So he goes back to work and he gives them Fantastic Four. It is a team book. It is a group of science-based adventurers. But go back and read that first issue. They don't wear any costumes. If you check the design elements for the production of Fantastic Four, they were designed with costumes in mind. And those costumes did even include masks. But Stan quickly, or Jack, I forget which one was the finger pulling the trigger on it, but it was decided, nah, we're not going to use the masks. Don't need them. These guys are a family. They know who each other are. They have a public identity. Why would they need masks? So there's already a few conventions he's bucking. And again,
on top of that,
family. Yeah.
Look at how the DC characters were. They were all treated like Greek gods. They were all never had any problems. They always solved everything in the end. Never any sort of interpersonal conflict really. And then you get to the Fantastic Four. And, I mean, Reed's absent-minded. It completely ignores his fiancée, who's obsessed with him and can't do anything to get his attention. You got, Ben, who is downright angry at his situation and everything that happened to him. And you got Johnny, who's a dick, who loves fucking with Ben. These characters weren't written like that back in these days, No. And that continues on with Spider-Man.
Conflicts.
Yeah.
Well, we're jumping the gun a little bit there. When Martin Goodman gets the pre-production issues back, he's furious. This isn't what he wanted. Why you're screwing me like this? But then he starts to see what the sales figures coming back are like, and
why you do like me like this?
A lot more successful than he expected. So he begrudgingly says, "Okay, you gave me something good with that one. All right, what else you got here, Stan?" So, pushing his luck further, Stan goes home and, with the help of Steve Ditko, they come up with another new hero character. But this one's a teenager. And he lives at home with, what, for all intents and purposes, are his parents. And they have domestic concerns, like, keeping a roof over their heads, keeping food on the table. Peter goes to school. He's worried about his grades and, how he's dealing with his other fellow students academically and socially. Like, no, this isn't how it's done. Readers don't care about this. They want action, adventure, and you can't have the teenager be anything other than the sidekick. You done screwed up again, Stan. But again, he gets the sales figures, and he sees just what a runaway success this is. Throws his hands up, like, all right, go for it, Stan. I don't know what I'm doing. Wouldn't it be great if Vince McMahon had the same approach?
Oh, more people would watch wrestling nowadays, that's for sure.
Definitely, I'd probably still be watching it myself. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
But yeah, that brings us to what starts the modern Marvel universe. Now there are going to be several key events to happen along the way, in particular in Fantastic Four. Few things to reconnect this modern Marvel age a little bit more tightly with the Golden Age stuff that we discussed. Anything else to add at this point here, Dan?
I mean, not too much without us starting to get into things like Spider-Man, because, I mean, we can't really get into the early Marvel Universe without talking about the other titles that came out at the time, because in no time they start crossing over. You know, the Avengers show up in X-Men, Fantastic Four, things like that, especially Spider-Man showing up literally everywhere.
And also you got the proliferation of the Rogues Galleries, which start to cross-pollinate.
Yep.
You've got characters that begin to spin off from various titles. And again, there's going to be some reintroductions that we'll touch up on. So
nice.
yeah, we've gone from the Golden Age to the Silver Age and the very beginning of the modern Marvel Age. So that's probably a good spot to leave things off for next week's discussion.
Yeah. So, but and because we did touch on the Fantastic Four, I did have post a Twitter question. I thought we'd get more onto them, but we can probably bring it up now. Is that the Dr. DC podcast gave us a question about the Fantastic Four, and they're from up there in the Yukon. And it's can somebody please help me understand what Franklin Richards' powers are and how they work, where they came from, etc., etc.
Well, Franklin Richards is the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm. Yep. He's their firstborn. He is a straight-up mutant. There's nothing else beyond the fact that he is a mutant, although he is one of the Omega mutants, which is basically the ultimate top-level mutants who have the most power that, nothing can really...
If you start delving into some of the deeper X-Men mythology, Franklin's one of the 12 legendary mutants that's supposed to change the course of mutant history.
Well, there's more than 12 of them when you get to that storyline. But in the current stuff, they've really developed what the Omegas are, and he is a reality manipulator. He does it on a universal level where he literally creates and changes, does whatever he wants, and it stays.
Yeah,
after the Space and Secret Wars, he rebuilt the Marvel Universe using his powers.
There's a few other reality warpers out there in the Marvel Universe that can change the world to their whim. But Franklin's in a class by himself.
Yeah, one of the more popular ones is probably what most people in this know is Wanda, but it's not. She's not nearly as.
Hers is more magic. Hers is more magic causing that.
As far as characters that viewing audiences might be familiar with, Legion would be a better example.
Oh yeah, which is I think they have FX Show, who is also Xavier's son or brother.
Yeah, it's also not so much that Legion is a reality warper. Legion's powers is that he has every power. Yeah, and every time he needs it, he can suddenly manifest a new power. Yeah. On the other hand, you have Proteus, who was Moira McTaggart's son, who could warp reality too. Difference being his is psionic. So when he walked away from it, it would revert back to normal.
It was a localized effect with him.
Exactly. And it wasn't permanent. It wouldn't stay. Whereas Franklin, if he wants to suddenly change a building into an entirely different form, it will change and it will stay that way.
It also seems, though, that to my recollection, Proteus's usage was quite a bit more jarring and disturbing on a sensory level. I can remember the X-Men characters recovering from his attacks and just being shaken.
Yeah, because my only thing with him is the X-Men cartoon and then Wolverine.
That's basically a straight-up adaptation of what happened in the comics, more or less. It's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But that X-Men cartoon was good for that.
A little bit darker than the cartoon was allowed to be.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that was a pretty good story arc for the cartoon adaptation.
As it stands right now in the current stories, Franklin seems to be getting depowered. He's running out of power for some reason, and they're trying to figure out how to solve it. The X-Men and the Fantastic Four also recently got into a fight over him, with the X-Men all moving to the island on Krakoa and wanting Franklin to join them, and his parents wanting nothing to do with that, and completely ignoring what Franklin wants. So, generally how that family views that son.
Covering a bit of Franklin's genesis, he was first created in mid-60s, 66, I think it was, in Fantastic Four Annual number 5, I want to say. Maybe 6. Probably 5. But, the conception was, the Fantastic Four are a family. Reed and Sue are married. Of course they're going to have kids. That's just logical. So they had a kid. But with Franklin being the son of 2 people whose genes were bombarded with cosmic rays and altered, Franklin's X gene powers were active almost from the get-go. He didn't have to wait till puberty to have full access to his abilities. So for a good chunk of his early years, he was left in scientific stasis.
Also, in those years, they did treat his powers more like an unknown cosmic. They didn't really know what his powers were, where they came from, why he had them. And it wasn't until John Byrne took over that John Byrne kind of took a step in the direction of going, oh, he's a mutant.
Yeah, which was completely logical with the character. Yeah,
it is. I mean, at that point, they hadn't established the fact that most superpowered people, if they have children, will likely end up being mutants, which is now something that's well established in the Marvel Universe. It doesn't guarantee it, but it makes it more likely.
Probabilities are much higher.
Yeah.
But once, like Daniel mentioned there, John Byrne's run of Fantastic Four, that brings Franklin back into play. I believe Walt Simonson's run also has a bit of fun with Franklin. But one of his major ongoing usages was in Louise Simonson's Power Pack. That was a group of child superheroes. They were 4 kids, all siblings. The youngest one, Katie Power, was the same age as Franklin. So they were natural playmates, and even though psionic blocks had been placed on Franklin's psyche to keep his powers under control at this very young age, he's like 5, maybe 4 at this time, he still has subconscious access to it. Like when he's asleep, he can call forth his astral form like we see Doctor Strange do all the time. Like he could do it, we refer to it as his dream form because he's not educated on the astral plane or anything like that. He's just a little kid who does what he does naturally. But he could do like telepathy, precognition, a few different things in his dream state. But it was subject to him being asleep for the most part. During those Power Pack years, he did spend time living with the Power family. Yes, that's right. Their family name is Power. Because Reed and Sue felt it was better to have Franklin in a stable home. They thought stable home environment. Neither the Richardses nor the Power parents knew what was going on with their kids. They didn't know.
X Factor had a better idea of it. The X-Men had a better idea of it than their parents did,
They're a little bit more up on unruly kids. Wolverine absolutely knew what was going on. He saved them, and specifically Katie Power, a few times.
Yeah.
Those precocious little kids wandered into the middle of the mutant massacre. That was a fun time. But, Franklin lived with them for a while to give him a little bit more stability in his childhood. Sibling type characters to develop with before he got his own sibling. Years later, they have a second kid, Valeria Richards. She's named by Dr. Doom.
Yep. But there are some pretty good Franklin stories out there. He was very important in the 90s story Onslaught. After that, he joined Generation X for a while. There was a really good Fantastic Four arc called Unthinkable that he was a pretty important part of. And both
that was X or Fantastic Four 500.
Yeah, 500. Yep, Doctor Doom does some pretty messed up stuff in that.
All-time terrible villain stuff. Like,
yeah.
Outside of Marvel Comics, I have read some pretty gruesome horror comics. Follow a number of characters that can be quite imaginatively dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, hell, one of my favorite comic book characters is Ron Post from Those Annoying Post Brothers. If you've heard of him, you know that that's a dangerous character. But what Doctor Doom does in Unthinkable is
unthinkable.
Top tier, horrific villain stuff. And I've watched Ron Post bite a baby's head off.
He's also, Franklin had some pretty good storylines in both the 1980s Fantastic Four X-Men comic and the recent one that just came out with the Dawn of X stuff.
Oh, nice.
All around, though, it's one of those characters that you can find some pretty interesting stories about him. He was involved in Days of the Future's Past storyline because he was Rachel's husband in the future.
The adult version of him.
Yep, who came back later in the Days of the Future Present storyline. Yeah.
That's one that I've wanted to read for a while, but
just borrow it from me.
Well, anytime I thought of it, you didn't have the whole thing at the time. I figure you got it by now.
Oh, I've had all of it for years.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, me and the 80s X-Men stuff, it's pretty solid for me at this point.
It was, from what I remember, it was just a matter of you putting together a comprehensive enough list and beginning to check off all the things that you
Actually, I think for that one, it was more of me trying to track down the last, the Fantastic Four annual. I think the rest of it I had no problem, but it was that Fantastic Four annual that was hard to find.
Yeah, for those that might be wondering what we're talking about with like annuals and things like that, there's a concept in comics called the fifth week event. Every so often, due to the calendar, you get a month that has 5 Wednesdays instead of the usual 4. Traditionally, companies like Marvel and DC would use this 5th week to put out something like an annual. And oftentimes these annuals would be a part of a big crossover. So in tracking down these big, usually in the summertime, crossover events, can be a little bit challenging because, you know, parts 1, 2, and 4, you know, they may have been from comics that were super popular and had super huge print runs. But then one of the other chapters might not be as big of a title, so there wasn't as much printed, and there's not as many going around. So that one might be a little bit harder to find. Or alternately, a particular series started to get hot, and there's collectors that just want the entire series, regardless of, you know, what the stories are.
Yeah.
And then that's another annual that is part of a bigger story, but where are you going to find the rest of it?
Exactly. That's always fun.
And part of the trouble I have personally found with trying to collect the annual crossovers, and I think Daniel will agree with me on this, is accidentally buying the same damn ones you already have.
Yeah, I've done that more than once.
And that's why I have my list on my phone now, just for like going through stuff.
It's a very good idea to do it that way. Very good idea.
Before I finally had a smartphone, I had a series of different little spiral notebooks for all the different sections of my comic collection.
Yeah,
so glad to have retired all that.
And then also the trick is to update it once you get stuff, because I've
every time.
But
every time.
Yeah, so that's always the fun of collecting comics, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, the hunt is. I love the hunt. You know,
exactly.
It's the fun part. Go to a con and coming out with a whole stack of books you've been looking for a while is so fun. Rating bins at comic stores.
More money than you should have, but feeling okay about it.
Yeah.
And I think on Tuesday I'll be able to do a little bit of hunting on at that BMV, because I'll be downtown for a couple hours.
Very nice.
So.
Very nice. I wish I could.
Describe hunting grounds there at BMV.
The wonderful things you can find there. I got the first volume of the Flintstones trade there for like $6 because the cover was a little damaged. That comic was awesome.
Yeah, I miss living not too far away from there.
Yeah,
but if Tuesday goes well, that may all change. So here's hoping.
Here's hoping, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that for now, I think that should wrap things up. That's everything for you guys, I think.
Yeah.
Seems to be.
All right.
Until next week.
Yeah, right. I think for that now. So up until next week, I am producing another podcast. Go check that out. It's called There's Nobody Here Named Josh, where I do that with my old college roommate. And until next week, folks, read some comics.